glad you've joined us this morning for this Tune Into Tourism webinar. Now, last week we had the first of 2 sessions, all dedicated to cutting through on social media. We talked about Facebook and Twitter then, and you can still watch that full session and all previous webinars if you go to the High YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/HIE Communications, and there's a playlist on there called Tune Into Tourism 2019. Today, we're all about Instagram. Now, as you can see there, over 1 billion people are active on Instagram every month. 500 million plus are active every day, and 48% of people on Instagram use it to find new travel destinations. So it's a hugely important marketing tool for tourism businesses, full of potential there. But you do have to do it right and make it work for you. And to help you do that, we've got 2 great guests here this morning. First of all, we've got Briony Cullin. You're a freelance digital marketer. Briony, Instagram is an incredible tool, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. And I think particularly thinking about planning holidays, researching great destinations, it's such a simple way to find great places to visit when it's so visual.
So it's that inspiration stage we talk about all the time in tourism. So important for that. Also joining us is Maggie Coll from Radical Travel. You're from the marketing team there. Radical Travel, that's quite a few brands you're taking care of there, isn't it?
Yep, so we manage Highland Explorer Tours, Haggis Adventures and also Shamrocker Adventures.
And there's different demographics there, so you're having to think about different things in terms of your voice on social media, aren't you?
Exactly, each of our kind of brands have a sort of different tone and different content that we put on our brand accounts.
Great, well we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but most importantly we want you watching, taking part and asking your questions, and Richard will be monitoring the chat box just at the side of the screen this morning to make sure we can do that for you. Richard.
Thanks, Julia. Yes, I am monitoring the chat box already. Listen, I'm not ignoring all of you people from the hotels, Palace Hotel and Inverness. I am just trying to strike up a dialogue with Emma, who is from Kintyre Gin headquarters. Hi, Emma. So any questions you've got or any good bits of advice or anything like that, get it into the chat box. I'll be able to translate that information over to the panel, get any questions. And then if you're not watching this live, I will try, and you're watching it on YouTube or on the catch-up, I'll try and express what the people watching have been saying and contributing. And so any questions that you've got, I will get them over to them. So please do get in touch. Back to you, Julia.
Yes, please do. Share your experiences. If you've had something that's worked particularly well for you, let us know. So I guess, Briony, we'll start at the beginning. Is Instagram right for your business? Because it is quite a commitment of time, and I think if you're going to do anything, you have to do it right, don't you?
Yes, that's exactly it. And I think nowadays there's a lot of social media platforms, so you need to really decide if Instagram is right for your business and then what kind of time you're going to put into it. So whether you decide to post a photo a day, or if you just say, you know what, I'm going to aim to put 3 pictures up a week. Just knowing what that commitment's going to be for you and your business.
Yeah, and quality is so important on Instagram, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I think nowadays especially, it's not about the heavily filtered photos, it's about great quality pictures. You can take those pictures on your phone, you don't need to have a great camera, but just making sure that you do some editing of the picture before you post it, I think really helps it stand out.
Now, conversely, Maggie, that's actually something that you guys don't do so much because you are using the power of user-generated content, aren't you, for your business?
Yeah, so we find because we tend to use a lot of user-generated content and people on tour take pictures and we repost the pictures, I think we just find because we're using lots of different people's pictures, we want to kind of, I guess, not edit it because it would be kind of so many different styles. It's try and keep one style. So yeah, we don't tend to edit our pictures. But
a brilliant way of really being able to capture the experience of what your business is all about.
Exactly.
By in real time having those pictures coming up on your Instagram feed.
Yeah, it's a really good way for people just to, even if they want to go onto our Instagram account and see what our kind of brand's all about and see, because Prague, a lot of it's about having fun and having a great time on tour and meeting lots of people, and just go onto our Instagram feed, that's a really visual way to see that.
People are so visual these days, aren't they? We have actually talked about Instagram before, so I guess what I would be keen to know now is what's new, how has it changed, because these platforms seem to be changing constantly. What are the new features that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, that's right. I think Instagram in particular is really leading the charge with new features all the time. It seems like something new comes out every week for Instagram. So Instagram Stories is becoming a huge platform in itself. So it's important to understand the difference between Instagram Stories, which is just short-term 24-hour content, and the Instagram feed, which stays there forever. You can have a booking button on your profile page so people can actually book with your business directly. There's loads more insights and information you can get from Instagram's analytics. You can create ads for Instagram stories. There's just so much that's coming from Instagram. Their own website blog has all the updates that come out. So it's great to just keep an eye on that to make sure that you're at the forefront of what's changing with Instagram.
Yeah, and taking advantage of that. I know that the book and reserve features it's actually a couple of years since they've come out, but it's still something that not everybody's really taking full advantage of, are they?
Yeah, exactly. And now you can also have like a shoppable Instagram feed. So if you have a product that you're selling, you can actually tag that in pictures in your Instagram feed. So that's a really simple way for converting customers who are looking at your brand.
Yeah, like for example, gin. If you were selling, gin, there you go. You could do that. How much do you use those features, Maggie? Are you sort of getting to grips with the new functions that you can have there on Instagram?
Yeah, I think like Briony was saying, there's so many new features and they're changing so often. It's really important to kind of keep up to date. So even things like Instagram stories, that's something we're doing more of at the moment. Creating Instagram highlights at the top of the feed, which is kind of your bits of your story that you can kind of keep and then put on the top of your feed so people can access it very quickly. Things like Giphy, like stickers, they're kind of a big thing as well now, where you can create your own brand stickers and then you can put them on the stories.
Right. That's a bit of investment though that requires, isn't it?
It is, yes, exactly. So I think it is just about keeping as up to date as possible and kind of keeping your Instagram feed live.
So there's lots of things you can do. You can take it to the next level, but what are the basics that is really important to get right, just if you're starting off on Instagram?
Yeah, I think just really focusing on what's on your profile. So you've got a section for a short bio, making sure that you're really saying to people what your business is about and why they should be interested in following you, making sure that you link to your website. You can use something either like Linktree or create a custom URL so that it's not just one link, they kind of see a menu of options when they click on it. It's a great way of referencing a bunch of different products and things like that. Thinking about what kind of hashtags you want to use on your pictures, having a mix of hashtags that are relevant just for your business, but then also, you know, the geographical area that you're in and what you're selling. So thinking of those kinds of things, as well as really thinking, what do I want to get from Instagram? And setting yourself some goals each month to achieve.
It's the same things that we keep talking about when we talk about social media. One, be social. So the idea of joining in communities, and in Instagram's case, that's using hashtags, isn't it, primarily probably, as well as adding in people where appropriate. For example, if you're using your user-generated content, make sure that you're adding in those people when you're sharing it. So be social, also tone of voice and really know who you're talking to. Obviously in your different brands that's going to be different people. For example, with Haggis Tours, what's your tone on there?
Our Haggis Adventures tone is kind of fun, it's a youth brand, so it's quite fun. It's all about kind of going out and tour, having a good time, so it's kind of getting that across in our content. So it's kind of tongue-in-cheek and it's a bit fun, a bit cheeky.
Yeah, I think we could actually have a wee look at some of your Instagram on for Haggis Tours. We've got some of the content that's on there, but it's still very high quality pictures that are coming up when you have a look for your name there. Let's see. So yeah, you've got over 4,000 followers there, and you're following some people. How do you decide who to follow?
We tend to follow kind of people that we're engaged with. Perhaps we have had travel bloggers that have gone out and then we'll kind of follow their account back. Kind of some of the bigger accounts as well, things like Visit Scotland, just kind of keep up to date. And I think, being engaged and engaging with other businesses on Instagram is important, as well as posting our own content.
Absolutely, and some group shots there, that seems to be kind of an important part as well of trying to get as many people who are engaged with your brand represented through your social media as well, and get into sort of like harness the power of social media. So it's got to be, you've got to have a bit of a strategy in terms of knowing your tone and knowing who your customers are. What's the next step then? Once you've got your biog up there, you've maybe had a wee think about how you're going to use it, your hashtags and what have you. How many pictures do you need to have in the first instance?
I don't know that there's like a specific rule in terms of how many pictures you need to have, but it's kind of just setting yourself a schedule, whether that's on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and setting the time aside not only to create the content, but then engage with people once you've posted it. So really making sure that you don't kind of just post a picture and then put your phone down and go away for the next 5 hours. People might want to ask you questions, they might want to comment, they might want to have a conversation with you, and you're really you're there to focus on the engagement. That's Instagram's algorithm is very much swayed towards engagement on pictures.
Okay.
So that's a really important thing to try and encourage people to comment.
And is it important to be replying as quickly as possible? Does that affect?
Yeah, I think so. And
algorithm?
if you think about yourself as a user of social media, if you were to ask a brand a question, you'd really appreciate it if they would get back to you quickly, particularly if you're in that kind of research and discovery phase. You might be researching your holiday and want to know something relatively quickly. If a brand comes back with a bit of personality and a bit of sass and you like that, then that would, for me, that would really convince me that they were the business that I should be booking with. So if they answered, if my really quick question was just something really simple and they answered straight away, I know I'd be really impressed in terms of customer service.
How frequently are you engaging with people on social in terms of actually replying to questions and having that dialogue?
Yeah, every day, kind of maybe a few times a day, I'll kind of log on to an account. It's so easy to do nowadays, and even if it's just for a short amount of time, because obviously everyone's busy, but I think, like you said, it's just so important. And I think just kind of keeping on top of things, because it is all your kind of content that's out there, so you want to be really engaged.
It can seem quite overwhelming because it is quite a commitment.
Yeah.
And if you're saying, well, I've got Facebook, I've got Twitter, I've got Instagram, what else, I've got my website, how do I manage all these things, especially if you're a smaller business?
Yeah.
Briony, how do you prioritise?
Yeah, I think it's understanding which social media platforms are best for your business. It is hard to be everywhere. So if you focus on doing 2 platforms really well, that's going to have a better result for you than trying to be everywhere and not responding to people. There are tools which you can use which have an inbox functionality so that all your comments across all social media platforms go to one inbox.
Right.
A tool that I use is called Sprout Social. So all those comments go to one place, so it makes it really easy to work through responding to people. It makes you feel across all platforms, and that includes Facebook messages, Instagram messages, and all of those things. So from a business point of view, I do understand it can feel like a full-time role in itself, but if you can kind of set up something like that, which works for you and your business, then that's a brilliant idea.
Okay, and Sprout, is that something that costs money?
Yeah, so Sprout Social, unfortunately, is a little bit on the expensive side. There are cheaper Instagram, or there are cheaper scheduling tools out there. I personally like Sprout because of that feature, that inbox feature. If you have more than one person working on your social media, it makes it really easy to make sure, someone's replied to that.
Yeah, you can stay on top of that.
Exactly.
Okay, we've got some questions coming in here. Yes, very broad range of questions. So, Chris asks, if you had to choose one, would it be photos or videos on Instagram? Because videos are becoming increasingly the way that people are engaging with it's video content on Facebook, it's video content on Instagram. Which one would you choose?
That's an interesting one. I think for us, I think we've found that photos just get more engagement. So personally for Instagram, on the kind of feed itself, I would say photos. But I think for Instagram stories, video is a really good way because a lot of it's kind of live content. So for example, if we had a travel blog out on tour, they could then do an Instagram takeover, and then video content is much more real time. So I think for us, probably photos, but I think videos, again, something that's also really important.
What would you say?
I think it totally depends on the brand and what works for them. I think there's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. Personally, I know I prefer watching videos on somewhere like Facebook or YouTube than on Instagram, but definitely Instagram stories has much more of a video vibe. So, but I would test it out depending on what the business was. I think some businesses' video content would really help capture what they're about.
I guess, and probably your kind of business, where it's the experience of actually, what you do. Okay, Catherine, Susan's, for adding book reserve button, do you do this off your phone? I think that's something that you...
Yeah, so most of Instagram's functionality is through the app on your phone. It's not really built for using from a browser. So yeah, definitely through the app itself.
Right, okay. And Avril Berry says, could you say more about brand stickers? Could we offer guests these to use on their pics?
So So that's something that you'd have to set up yourself. I think it's on Giphy, like you kind of create your own stickers, upload them to Giphy, and then you can use hashtags, and these hashtags then pull through to Instagram. So there is a lot of kind of good like websites and stuff out there. That's how I've kind of found out more about it, and it's something that we're looking to kind of get more into. So I'd say Later, that's kind of a scheduling platform we use for Instagram. They have a lot of good blog posts about how to use things like stickers. So I would say definitely to have a look at that kind of content.
Yeah, and there are so many resources out there, aren't there, Briony, in terms of, you know, tools for you to use, an explanation on Hootsuite, for example. There's lots of articles on there as well, isn't there?
Yeah.
And that's a common one that people are using. We'll talk a little bit more about the scheduling a little bit later on. That question though about using brand signatures, offering guests them to use on their pics, getting your guests to get involved and getting them to use the right hashtags. How do you do that? How do you manage that within your business?
So we find like just promoting kind of our hashtags. We'll use our hashtags in a lot of our branding, like our brochures. If people book tours, we'll have on our website. And just getting our tour guides as well to really get involved and to encourage people to post pictures when they're on tour using our hashtags.
So it's everywhere. Every
It
time
is
you're
indeed.
interacting, you're saying, don't forget, if you're on social media,
Yeah.
to use that. Okay. Andy Martin's asked the question, we always get asked this question, is it helpful to link your Instagram with your Facebook, or would you keep them separate? Linking social media accounts is a bit of a dodgy area, isn't it? Would you do that?
Yeah, I would. They are essentially owned by the same company now. Particularly if you're going to be doing any kind of advertising, you can set up your ads using Facebook Business Manager, and then that gives you the functionality to run those ads on your Instagram as well, create different images and graphics using for Instagram than you would for Facebook. But yeah, I would definitely look at using and having those connected.
Okay, that's great. And Avril also asked, I'd like to ask more about repost app or other means. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, so in terms of sharing like user-generated content, so I'm not sure how you reshare people's pictures.
So we have two ways of doing it. We either just go onto Instagram ourselves and search our hashtags. So we'd search Haggis Adventures. And then there's sites that you can kind of download people's photos and then reshare them that way. And we also use it's like a widget called Stackla. And what it does is you can set it up so you can put in your hashtags, and then it'll basically pull through all your user-generated content, and you can then apply this to your website. So I think there's different ways of doing it. But I think if you're kind of maybe just new, a good way to do it is just to kind of search your hashtags.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just want to be browsing and seeing that if people are talking about your business, that you're joining in that conversation. The last thing that you want is for people to be talking about how much they love your business and you've completely missed those lovely comments. So yeah, just keeping on top of it and then resharing if you feel like that's something you want on your feed.
So much work. Briony, you've caused a bit of a storm in the chat box.
Oh my gosh.
People
What have I said?
Up in arms
Oh no,
at
I'm
the
sorry.
price of Sprout Social.
I know, I'm really sorry.
$99 a month for the standard package. Is there an alternative that's cheaper or ideally free that they could use?
There might be, you could probably set up something similar in terms of an email inbox, in terms of getting notifications of comments and having them all sent to one email address, for example. So yeah, other than that, I would maybe just set aside in your calendar each day a little 5-minute window of saying, okay, I'm going to check up on Facebook, I'm going to check on this. But yeah,
5
I'm
minutes.
sorry.
I spend more time than that just browsing through my own personal.
I'm not in any way affiliated with Sprout Social, so I am sorry about the price.
Right, okay.
I
so
would
please
change it
don't
if I
direct
could.
your ire towards Briony. It's not her fault. Paul Oldham's asking, can I manage Instagram from my PC? I find using my phone really frustrating.
Not really. Instagram was definitely created to be an app as opposed to a web-based platform. There are workarounds and things. There are scheduling tools that you can use to post to Instagram, but Instagram itself would prefer you using their app.
Richard, I want to go to you. I know you've been dealing with the Sprout Social gate, but what else is happening in the chat box?
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's nice to still be included now that we've got the new, way of getting questions straight to you. So I'm glad you did throw over to me. But yeah, it is eventually but the main thing seems to have been that £99 a month. But people are $99 a month. But people are generally very engaged in this conversation. Instagram seems to be something that people really want to know much more about. One of the questions that's coming through a lot of times, and we've had this kind of before, is how many hashtags is too many hashtags? Is it better to put the hashtags into, you know, when you're commenting, or do you put into the comments or into what you actually write? And then one other question, so a hashtag question, then one other question from Katie Milne. She says, does anybody have any recommendations on Instagram tools that delve deeper into the Instagram analytics than what you get from the business account platform? So there's two specific questions. Back to you, Julia.
Okay, well, picking up on the analytics, Maggie, what do you guys use for analytics? Is it Later, the scheduling tool that you use?
Yeah, so we use a scheduling tool called Later, and it also gives you analytics as well, which I think we found quite helpful. What it does, it kind of takes, I think it's your last 30 posts perhaps, and it works out, you can post at a range of times, and then it'll give you analytics like the best time of day to post, depending on your market. It'll give you some more kind of, information about like your best kind of engagement, your best reach, your market when your users are online. So it is a good way for us to kind of get a better understanding of when we should be posting, what should be posting, and the type of thing that people are obviously liking, because at the end of the day we want people to engage with us. So
exactly.
Yeah,
and that's the similar sort of insights that you get from Facebook, you know, really simple. People tab in there and posts as well. So it's useful to be able to have that. Now, Later, is that free? Or
Later is, I think you have to pay for it as a business account, but I don't think it's not too, I don't think it's too expensive.
Okay, fingers crossed.
Yeah, so I'd say it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah. Okay, hashtags, Wendy's question, which Richard mentioned there, should we put hashtags in the original post or in the comments? Is one better practice than the other, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters, and it's really up to what you want your business style to be. There is ways of spacing in Instagram comments, so you can kind of push down the hashtags, so you can have a nice clear caption with paragraph lines, which looks quite nice aesthetically in terms of reading. It's really up to you. It doesn't really make a difference in terms of the reach of those hashtags.
So as long as the hashtags are in there somewhere, it's going to come up. Your image is going to come up. How many hashtags is too many hashtags? Is there such a thing?
I think actually it's not meant to be more than 30.
Right.
But really, when you're thinking about your hashtags, you want to have a mix of higher search hashtags, like say hashtag Scotland.
I did a little bit of this yesterday, and I tried hashtag Scotland and saw where it took me. Al, if you can play that out for me. But basically, once you start delving in, then you see other ones popping up, and that's quite a good way to do a bit of research, isn't it, to see what ones are being used. Yeah. And sites like, you know, Visit Scotland, for example, was another great place to start. They had the Scot Spirit hashtag, which was really useful. And you know, you can see there the sort of things. Isle of Skye, if you're in the Isle of Skye, makes sense. Think about your location as well as just Scotland. Visit Scotland have got a hashtag. Hashtag Scotland is now, so that people can use that in their posts, and then that gives them permission to share them. And you can see some of those posts, very high quality images, look fantastic. What a great way to get a bank of really good images that relate to your business up there without you having to spend the time. So it works in terms of, you know, actually harnessing a community, and it also helps you in terms of generating more content for your business. What other ways can we use hashtags then, apart from just, you know, searching for them and trying to come up with what we think might be the best ones?
Yeah, so I think what Visit Scotland there have in terms of Scotland is now is a really great idea for businesses, that they can use that themselves, of thinking of their own branded hashtag that they'd like to get out there for visibility. So whether you want that to be your brand name or a marketing campaign now, using that as a way of getting people engaged in your community is a really great idea.
What kind of hashtags are you using for Haggis Tours?
So we use a range of like our own hashtags. We've got like hashtag Haggish Adventures, hashtag Stay Wild, so those are kind of our own brand ones. And then again, we use a lot of destination ones, so like hashtag Isle of Skye, hashtag Glencoe, depending where we are. And then we also use, you know, they have groups sometimes, like for example Visit Scotland, like bigger accounts. And that's just a useful way if people are looking through the hashtags to kind of, like if you post something, you get picked up by a bigger account, and it's, I guess, another just good way to get yourself out there. And
you had an example of that recently. It was from Up Helliah, wasn't it?
Yes.
And that got picked up, which gave you, you know, thousands and thousands more of you know, impact of people actually seeing that picture and being engaged with your brand.
Exactly. So it might not happen all the time, but I think it's definitely just worth having the hashtags in there, especially if people are looking for something like a tourism destination or a kind of tourism business, I think it's something that people, like you say, looking for inspiration would quite often come to Instagram, and they might be going to Shetland, they might just search the hashtag Shetland, and then if your business comes up, it's someone that might have not necessarily come across your business. So it's, I think it's definitely important to get the hashtags in there.
Yeah, and I think Instagram, on Twitter, you're really quite limited because of the characters, but you're really not on Instagram.
Yep.
And so why not use as many as you can to try and get that reach out there? Okay, there's another question coming in. Rebecca asks, have you used displaypurposes.com?
No.
No.
I'm sorry to say.
Rebecca, you need to tell us a little bit more. Richard, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Thanks. Yeah, I don't really know much about it myself, but I think Rebecca says it's good for generating hashtags. I think that's what it is. So displaypurposes.com is good for generating hashtags. Now, just want to say to everybody the same advice that I've just given Emma again, is that everybody in the chat room has been asking for each other's Instagram accounts. So everyone's sharing the Instagram accounts. They look fantastic, but Emma says she's now been diverted and is now looking at all these amazing pictures. So just everybody stay focused. If you're watching on YouTube or anywhere else, if you go to the live stream, the HIE live stream account, you just Google up live stream HIE, you'll find it, and all the comments will be here after we've finished. You can come back and look at them anytime. So stay concentrating and keep your questions coming in. Back to you, Julia.
Thank you very much, Richard. Well, those pictures, the quality being so important, they are engaging and easy to be distracted by a fantastic Instagram feed. When you're putting those images up, obviously, Maggie, you're not editing them because you're trying to keep consistency because you're using so many of other people's photos. But if you are going to edit them, if you do have an idea of a sort of style and tone that you want to be sticking to, how can you do that?
Yeah, so definitely think about editing your photos if that's what your business brand style is going to look like. Personally, I edit my pictures in a consistent way so that my feed generally looks the same. Some really simple tweaks that I think make any photo look better are to increase the sharpness slightly, particularly if you're taking that picture on your phone, and even just making the colour a little bit more saturated. And these are all editing things that you can do within Instagram itself. You don't need to use a separate app. There are other apps where you can edit your photos in a lot more detail, but personally I use the editing tools within Instagram itself. Makes it quick, makes it easy, and then my photos have a consistent look to them.
And you do work a lot with food.
Yes,
that's your sort of passion. And food, you want to make it look as appetizing as possible.
Exactly.
And so that brightness, and sharpening those images as well. But that probably across the board is a good idea. So that's photo editing. What about engaging with other businesses? We've talked about using hashtags to try and find those customers out there. What about other businesses? Is that important?
Yeah, I think it is really important. I think you've really got to think about who's using Instagram, and it's not just consumers. It is all the other businesses in the chat box. They're chatting away to each other. You might find a business that you can collaborate with. You might find a destination that you want to visit. And all of those kinds of things. So taking the time to chat to other businesses is just as valuable as chatting to your potential customers.
Do you find you do that much, Maggie, on your feed?
We do, like for things like competitions, for example. We worked recently with a hostel called Code Hostels in Edinburgh, and we ran like a joint competition. So I think, again, like you say, working with other businesses, it's a good way to collaborate.
What other competitions are you doing then? I know we talked about last week on Facebook, like and share, which you're really not supposed to do, we discovered. But what about on Instagram? How can you sort of gamify that, I guess, and what kind of competitions are you running? How are you doing that?
So for us, what we do is for tours, especially certain tours like we did for Up Helia and Shetland, we did a photo competition. So we got people on tour to upload their best Up Helia pictures, and then I would go through the Instagram feed and we offered a prize on tour to the person that came up with the best picture. So it was just like an extra way to kind of encourage your people or customers to kind of post onto Instagram, use your hashtags, and really just to get them involved. And at the same time, it was great for us because it gave us great content.
And you're using offline and online together. So you had posters up with the hashtag telling people about this competition, driving them online, and then to upload their pictures and hopefully engage with your business even further.
Exactly, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, there's so much to talk about with Instagram. We touched on scheduling tools. You mentioned later. There's a few of them. There was a question that came through from Emma. She says Hootsuite seem to have ditched Instagram. Is that right?
I personally don't use Hootsuite, so
Right.
I'm not too sure about that one.
We use later, so I'm not
Right.
100% sure on that one.
Okay, well, we'll have to do a wee bit more delving. Maybe Richard could have a wee look into that. But you use later, so
Yes.
tell us a little bit about how that works and what the functionality is of that.
So with Later, what you can do is you can have several brands, which again works really well for ourselves, having the different brands on our account, and it means you can schedule posts. I think you can schedule posts for, like however far ahead you want to.
And that's quite a new feature, isn't it? Because we didn't used to be able to schedule Instagram posts,
Yeah.
which made it very difficult to manage if you're struggling for time and you're trying to run your business as well. So being able to
Exactly.
schedule posts is a great tool.
It's really good, yeah. So we tend to at the start of every week, I'll kind of schedule things for the upcoming week, and it just allows you, again, it's if you want to work on a desktop computer as well, you can do that from your computer, which again, because I know another thing with phone, it's so tiny when you're trying to kind of type in all those hashtags. So it's a good way to do it off your desktop computer. And again, I think it just for time management as well, you can post at the start of the week and then you can go on every day and engage, and kind of get involved in the comments, but it just means you're not having to come up with that content every single day.
And how often should we be posting on Instagram? What do people expect? Or does it depend on?
It does
on your
totally
audience?
depend. I think there seems to be this idea out there that you have to post every day, whereas I try and encourage people to really break that mold and say, but does that suit you? Is that actually performing well for you? Looking at the analytics to see if that does work, because actually you might find it better to post 4 times a week and all of those pictures are amazing and your audience are really engaging with them, as opposed to kind of posting substandard content. So thinking about it in terms of what you can manage, what works for your business, and what's going to fit in with your schedule.
And how can we measure how effective we're actually being in terms of conversion, in terms of turning that engagement into a booking?
Yeah, so making sure that you're really having a good delve into your insights and your analytics, and keeping a track of like month-on-month performance or week-on-week performance. Because if you're not spending time on the reporting and analytical side of things, you're really not getting the full picture of whether Instagram is working for your business. Checking things like Google Analytics and seeing how much traffic is actually coming to your website from Instagram. I think nowadays the heyday of like building a business on Instagram is not what it was, because it's been around now for a few years, whereas people used to be able to completely run their business on Instagram and not worry about having a website. Whereas nowadays, I think you really need to be more savvy. Think of the big picture of your marketing strategy, not just putting all your eggs into Instagram's basket.
And so how much then are you tagging your own website in your posts? Is it just in the profile? Or can you be putting it in posts as well, or is that not a good idea?
Well, so Instagram captions and comments, you can't post links in them.
Right.
So that it doesn't work. So if you go to the effort of typing out your URL, no one's going to be able to tap on it and visit your website. So it's very much directing people towards your profile link. And like I said earlier, you've just got one URL, space for one URL. So whether you want to make that something that then takes people to a menu of options, or whether you just want them to land on your homepage, it's totally up to you. But yeah, really thinking about how to get people to visit your Instagram profile and then click through to your website.
And on your Instagram page then, when you do click through from your profile, are you just landing on the homepage, or have you got a specific page there for people to come from Instagram?
And we just land on the homepage, so we've got kind of a link in our bio to our Haggis website, so it's a good way for people, if they're on the Instagram feed, to get directly to the Haggis website.
And how well does that work, do you find?
Yeah, I think it works fairly well. I think another way is like working with things like influencers and travel bloggers, and if they are tagging you in their account when they're if they go out on tour and tag us in their account, that's a good way for people to get to our Instagram page and then kind of to find our business online.
I'm just getting some news in from the news desk. Richard, a Business Insider said yesterday, Hootsuite is one of the most popular social media management tools, and analytics is a big part of what the platform provides. The system's user interface takes the form of a dashboard and supports social network integrations for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google+, and YouTube. So it is supposedly still working for Instagram. But Chris, Vivian and Emma say Hootsuite is terrible now. So what can we be using instead of Hootsuite then?
So there's also Buffer. Buffer is another really popular tool, great for scheduling. You've mentioned Later. I'm trying to think what other ones there are that are available. There's Tailwind, which I've not personally used, but I believe that's quite popular for Instagram.
But they're all broadly doing the same thing, which they're allowing
Yeah.
you to schedule and also get some analytics there.
Yeah.
So you want to be using something, because otherwise you're creating an awful lot of work for yourself, or it's becoming much more time consuming than it needs to be.
Yeah.
And you're also not able to delve in and to get that information that you need so that you can ensure that what you're doing is effective. So what about influencers? You mentioned influencers there, and Briony, there's some new rules about using influencers that we need to be aware of, isn't there?
Yes, that's right. So back in January this year, the Competition and Markets Authority released a press release to specifically say that they're kind of cracking down on influencers not disclosing when they're working in commercial relationships with businesses. So I think it's really important that businesses are aware of these guidelines as well as the Advertising Standards Authority guidelines and really know what they mean in terms of working with influencers, because it's become something which businesses, they kind of feel like they should be doing, but they need to be just as savvy with the rules as the influencers themselves. So essentially, when you're having a commercial relationship with a blogger or an influencer, that does need to be disclosed as an ad on Instagram. So that might change a business's perspective of whether they want to work in a commercial relationship with a blogger or influencer.
And how are you disclosing that? I mean, how do you actually do that?
So the guidelines say that the content should be clearly an ad. So for Instagram, it's either going to be in the location area, you can say paid partnership with, but not everyone has access to that. So it might just be that the caption starts with ad, so capitals AD, and then hashtag ad. And it's purely because there's been quite a lot of examples of influencers not disclosing that they have any commercial relationship with a business, just posting, you know, I went on this trip and it was amazing and I had the best time, not disclosing that they got it for free or were paid. And so that's something the CMA is very conscious of cracking down on. But the implication of that applies to the business as much as it does to the person. So businesses really need to set the, you know, when they're having a conversation about working with an influencer, treat it like you would any other business relationship. It's a contract.
Yeah.
What do you want the influencer to do? What are you going to give them in return? So approaching it like that means that down the line you won't have any complaints of, oh, we gave away X holiday and got nothing in return, because you'll have had an agreement at the very start of your relationship with them. So working with influencers is a great way to get exposure, but it's important to check out what these guidelines say.
You work with influencers at all, Maggie?
Yeah, so we tend to work with like travel bloggers or influencers that are maybe like already in Scotland and that are going, you know, planning on visiting kind of Scotland or going on a tour anyway. So yeah, we've worked with several in the past.
And how do you decide who's going to be a good fit for you?
It's a lot of it is research and like going onto their page, seeing if they're a good fit for the brand, like the type of content they post, is that the kind of content that you think would be relevant to your own followers? So that again depends on the account we're using, and then just doing as much research as possible. And like Briony said, like just coming up with a contract and discussing. We often meet with them before they go out, so we can just get an idea of the expectations and what we're looking for. But it's a really good way for us to kind of showcase our product, just because it is such a kind of visual thing that people want to go out and see.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris Turs is actually asking, what's the best way to approach influencers? So how do you make that initial contact?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I think we tend to often reach out on social media platforms themselves, just because if they've kind of if you found them through Instagram, it might be quite a nice way just to send them a direct message. And then I often say, if you're interested, maybe give me an email, and then we just kind of take it from there. But I think as well making it personal, and that works on both sides of the thing. Like I think if someone approaches me and they've obviously checked out the business and know a lot about it, that's a really good sign. And I think if I go to someone influencer as well, I'm guessing they get, some of them, the big ones, get a lot of requests in. So I think if you kind of personalise your approach and just tell them that you think you like their style and you think it would work well with your brand. I think that's a really good way to start a conversation.
The reason why. Show that you're not just spamming as many people as possible, that you're taking the time to get to know them as well. So Gin Emma, as Richard is nicknaming her Emma, I'm sorry, you're a person in your own right, you're more than just gin. Gin bloggers contact us all the time, basically they just want free gin.
Yes.
Well, yeah, so how do you avoid kind of being taken advantage of, I guess?
Well, yeah, I think you can still definitely have that conversation by email of, okay, if we're going to send you a bottle of gin, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to feature it on Instagram stories? Are you going to do a little tasting video? Having that discussion around what's going to result from the free product is definitely worth having. You know, really having that agreement to start with, or that conversation to start with, is going to help you in the long term, because you're going to then know who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with. So it is really worth kind of coming up with an agreement that suits you both.
Well, Emma's adding that they don't get out of bed for more than 10,000 followers. So there you go. What is the sort of number of, how many people do you require an influencer to have following them for them to really be worth pursuing as a partner?
Well, going back to what the CMA guidelines say, there is actually no number that they've specified in terms of how many followers you need to have to be considered to be an influencer.
We're all influencers.
Everyone is an
influencer.
influencer.
Can I get some free
Exactly. And now actually there is a bit of a movement towards what is called micro-influencers. So I think that's people who have less than 10,000 followers, because you want to work with people who have genuine followers, who have a real engaged audience. And actually for your business, that might be a smaller blogger. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone with 100,000 followers. So you want to be doing really great level of research, like you've said, and finding out whether their followers are genuine, for one thing. Where are their followers based? Are they actually interested in your product at all? If you're a gin company but all the followers are under 18, is that going to be worthwhile you working with them? And actually you could fall into a bit of trouble with the Advertising Standards Authority if you were going to do that kind of promotion. Same with like gambling companies and things like that. So you do have to, you know, do that lot of research and find out who is the right person to go with our brand.
It's a lot of work, isn't it? Oh my gosh, it's a lot of work. Well, just before we go, I'm just conscious of we're running out of time. We had one last slide, I think, with just some other, more tips. So just before we go, a couple more things that we could maybe have a look at. Location, geotag on your post, that's really important, isn't it? Especially in Scotland.
Yeah. I think definitely we always tag any location we're using. I just think it is important, especially if people are in the area, and it just allows you to kind of, we did an Instagram story recently where I hashtagged Edinburgh, and there's now a kind of, there's like a story for Edinburgh, so it got picked up by the Edinburgh hashtag, and it meant they kind of reposted that story onto their page. So again, it's then more people were seeing it. If there's people in Edinburgh that are looking for the Edinburgh kind of story, our post came up. So I think it is a good way, definitely.
Definitely, make sure you're not missing out on that. And archiving old posts now, you can do that too.
Yeah, so if you look at your Instagram feed and you feel like there's maybe like a few pictures that either don't represent your brand anymore, maybe they were particularly seasonal, or maybe there's something that you don't offer anymore, you can go into the post and you can actually archive it. So it's different from deleting it completely. It goes into an archive and you could retrieve it in the future if you wanted to. But essentially it cleans up your feed overall. You might want to do that for older posts, for example.
Great, lots of great tips there. And I guess before we sort of wrap up, you talked about some articles to find out more, to get more information, the sort of things that you're doing all the time to try and stay on top. Whereabouts are you going for your information on Instagram?
I'd say Later, like I said, they are the kind of scheduling platform we use, but they also produce like blog posts, and it's often like very up-to-date information with new features that Instagram's bringing out. So I think I've signed up to their newsletter, and that's like a really useful way for us to kind of find out and kind of keep on top of the trends.
Briony, where would you say for people to go?
Yeah, so we've talked about Sprout Social. You don't have to be a Sprout Social user. They do have a great blog that they put out, so keep up with their blog even if you're not using the product. Buffer also does a quite good podcast as well if you're more into listening than reading. So generally keeping up with those tools. They do all write their own blog content. And sometimes you'll read one that says, you know, do X, Y, and Z, and you'll read another one that says A, B, C. So it's about reading and then kind of making your own judgment from those.
Okay, fantastic. Well, before we go, Richard, any final comments coming through on the chat box?
Thanks, Julia. Listen, thanks so much to everybody who was involved today. Really appreciate it. But Diane from Where Stags Roar has said that she's found that you can sometimes piggyback too at no cost. So you can take a nice picture that's relevant to your business, but that can maybe include a product that might also be related, and then they can repost it and share, and you can get your name out there. Catherine says we could do with a session on things like how to archive, how to read analytics, and how to add a book button, a bit of a how-to thing, which is something that we can look into doing too, Catherine. But that's about it. I think most of the rest of it you got covered there, Julia. So, but thanks to everybody who's been watching. And as I said earlier, if you're watching this on YouTube or on another source, do go back to the live stream account, livestream.com/HIE, and you can see all the comments that have come in, and everybody's been sharing their Instagram handles and all that, so you can get onto that at a later date. But for now, back to you, Julia.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, and thanks for all your comments and your questions today. That's very much the point of these sessions. They are very much for you. I would say, on terms of practical workshops, maybe have a look out for some DTS workshops that might be happening in your area. Go to their website, www.digitaltourismscotland.com, and you'll find also some good blog posts and information on there too. Thanks. All that's left to be said, I guess, is to say thank you very much to our guest today, to Briony Cullin, and also to Maggie Coll. And as ever, this full webinar will be available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/HIE Communications, as well as we'll have some highlights on there and some top tips. So please do join in. We're on Facebook. That's another great place. You can get in touch with us. Let us see your Instagram handle on there. We're at Highlands and Islands Enterprise. Quite a long one, but worth typing it in. And we're on Twitter at HIE Scotland, a little bit shorter there. Next week we're going to be talking about building and managing your online reputation. So important these days. How are you interacting with your customers online? People are more vocal than ever, so it is so important not to get that wrong. You have to get it right. Prevention better than the cure there. So we're going to talk about managing your online reputation. But for now, I've been Julia Sullivan. Thank you so much for taking part in today's session. We'll see you next week.